Hello again, welcome to another show. This one we're looking at 80s genre films that were released by Arrow. Now this is not all of Arrow's genre films, I've just got a bunch of them. There's like 10 or 11 of them that I'm going to cover briefly. Again, it's just like, it's in the summer. You maybe want to watch some sillier movies, so these are fun movies you may want to pick up from Arrow that might not get publicity elsewhere. The first one's obvious. The first one is probably one of the most infamous ones, which is Pieces. You know, which has a it's exactly what you think it is the tagline for this one. And it really is exactly what you think it is. It's about a serial killer who cuts up people. He cuts up young women in a university. It's a serial killer movie in a university, and it's utter trash. It's complete trash in every possible way. The motivation of the killer doesn't make much sense. There's all sorts of weird stuff like kung fu fights, and it's got a very weak lead character, this young man who's been brought in by who sees one of the early murders or is connected to it briefly and becomes friends with the cops, and he's useless. The murders, I mean, it's cheesy effects, gratuitous violence, utter brutality. If that sounds good to you, watch Pieces, because it is, you know, it's a fun film, even though it is utterly stupid. But it's a perfect example of an 80s slasher movie, you know. Does exactly what you expect, just works. Next we have Satan's Blade. Now this one is nowhere near as good as Pieces. This, I wouldn't say good, I should apply to Pieces, but this one is well, it's a slasher movie set in the snow in the backwoods. This couple go to this like little area where there's these like cabins, and it's kind of like what happens in a horror movie intruded on a like indie character based movie, except you get too much of the indie character based stuff and it's not well done, and there's not enough actual, you know, brutality of the serial killer movie. But this is still kind of enjoyable, even though it's total trash, and it's very weak. The horror stuff does is very weak. I mean, there really isn't much there, but for some reason it's really still really enjoyable to watch, even though it's not very good. I mean, the acting is atrocious. The acting is terrible in every possible way, but it's still bizarrely enjoyable, and you get some good extras in this, so it's a nice, fun film to watch. A lot of these Arrow releases have like commentaries by the Hysteria Continues podcast, which makes them worth seeing, because they just do these great commentaries, and there's always these like weird making of stuff that is much better than the film themselves. Now we have the nadir of these films, Blood Rage, all about twins, one of whom's a killer and one of whom's a victim. Now this is the worst. It's even worse than Satan's Blade, but it is more entertaining because it's so over the top. Louise Lasser plays the mother of these two boys, and she goes completely haywire acting wise. The supporting parts are terrible, but it's pumped up to Steve so much that it's weirdly enjoyable, even though you have to fast forward through some of the dialogue scenes because they're boring. Anytime it goes towards Psychoville, it's great fun. And we were going to act playing both twins, it's maybe identical twins. And the twin that did the killing set that one up. So the other one who's coming back home, who everyone thinks is the killer is actually the innocent one, and the person who everyone thinks is innocent is actually the killer. So that should create more tension than it actually does, because it's just played out. You're thinking this is going to do a lot of mind games. They don't really do that. They do lots of killings. And as long as you think about it, there'll be tons of killings, you're going to have fun with it. But it is utter trash. It's total trash, but for the summer. This kind of summer weather, this could be a perfect film for you. So I recommend it for that, because I think you can have a lot of fun if you go out in the right spirit. But you may need the fast forward button when people are trying to act, because the acting in this film is either way over the top or atrocious, depending on the actor. But they like having lots of gore, you know, so what can you do? Now we go to my favourite of these, which is Madman. There's a serial killer called Madman Mike. It's a in the woods thriller, basically Friday the 13th. There's a mad killer, mythological mad killer. They're at camp for kids, and the camp counsellors have to protect the kids from this serial killer that's going around killing everybody. That's it. It's basically a Friday the 13th movie without Jason. That's all it is. But it's on par with the Friday the 13th movies of that period, if not better than some of them, because it's more enjoyable. Again, some of the acting's atrocious. Some of the acting's so terrible it's enjoyable. But it's got a weird atmosphere because it's not Jason doing it from Friday the 13th. You have a new killer, so you have different rules. So it makes it more enjoyable. And it's just a bit fresher as a film than some of the Friday the 13th. It's just more fun. At least for me it's more fun. But it's not in no way a good film. But if it's the summer, because this is the summer, you might have some fun watching this one, because it's harmless 90 minutes of trash. Now we're going to some weirder films, more sci-fi, horror, hybrids. Let's start with Contamination. This is a 80s alien rip-off, but they don't have a budget to go into space, so they have these egg things come down to Earth, and who are going and end up getting sent to these cocoa plants in South America, and are going to do these horrible things to people, and some people are sent to investigate, and they have to find out what's going on, and there's weird conspiracies going on, and you know, it's complete 80s trash. It's trying to be with 3 different things at once. Again, horribly acted. Horrible acting all round. The lead character is completely sexist. There's a gratuitous shower scene. There's some really terrible effects towards the end with a lot of blood, where the blood starts to flow. And they try to be a bit more psychedelic. It's utterly terrible in every possible way, but highly recommended because it is a lot of fun. But you have to be in the right mood for this one. This one is, I recommend a Friday night and a couple of drinks for this one, because it is terrible, but it's really enjoyable. These next 3 are actually fun films, genuinely fun films. I have a lot less caveats for these ones. First one's Shock Treatment, which is a sequel to Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a weird one, it's all musical, but it takes place in a studio that represents a town. The musical numbers aren't as good as the original. There's no Tim Curry, but it's the same director and same writer as Rocky Horror Picture Show. They're trying something different, and they're doing a send-up of TV and all of that stuff. So there's lots of interesting stuff going on there. So I highly recommend it as a weirdo film. It doesn't always work. It's not in the same league as Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it is fun. It is a unique, different type of film, and I think you'll have some enjoyment out of it. It's definitely one, if you're seeing an arrow sale and there's like 5 for £30, that's definitely one to get, because you'll have some fun with it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, just so much joy from this film. This is campy as hell. I mean, there's human characters, they don't count. It's really about the Killer Clowns from Outer Space coming down, doing all these horrible stuff to people. All the guns are candy covered, and it's all very campy and very silly, but it's just enjoyable. It's so enjoyable that it's irresistible. So I would highly recommend this film. This is just so much fun. I don't want to say much about it, you just gotta go see it, because the joy is seeing what they do with this premise, because they do a lot more than you'd think they would do with it. They do have some flawed performances, but that's to be expected in these low budget 80s films. But they still do a lot with the effects and with the clown characters, so you're going to get a lot of fun from it. Then we have Hell Comes to Frogtown. Rowdy Roddy Piper's first film before he did They Live. This is a joy, this is a pure joy. I mean, Sam Hale, who Piper plays, is a tad sexist. But he gets put in his place, he gets a bomb attached to his crotch, and he has to go to Frogtown because he's one of the few men who can breed, and he has to find these women and get them back and actually breed with them so they can actually repopulate the earth. But it's really an excuse for him to deal with these frogmen in Helltown. It's just fun, it's silly, but it's fun. It's really a lot of fun and it's really enjoyable. Now we're going to 80s action thrillers. we have the Delta Force, which is Lee Marvin, Chuck Norris. For some reason Chuck Norris has got the main title and Lee Marvin doesn't. Lee Marvin's obviously an icon and Chuck Norris will never be. This is a canon film. Mihaela Golem directed it. Robert Foster is the Palestinian villain. It's trash. It's total trash, but really enjoyable trash. Like it's meant to be a take on the idea of Palestinians taking terrorists and planes and things. I mean, because Golem obviously was an Israeli, and he had strong feelings about Palestine and Israel. But he expresses them as a comic book film with a plot that's really absurd if you look at actual politics and what happens in these situations. It's really daft, but it's very enjoyable. This is one of Lee Marvin's final performances, if not his final one. He's phoning it in, but he's still, because he's Lee Marvin, he can still phone it in and do a really good job. Compared to Chuck Norris, who's the lead and he can't act his way out of a paper bag. So, but it's really absurd, it's really enjoyable. Now we have something that's more fun, way more self-knowing. This is Rima Williams' The Adventure Begins. This is from Guy Hamilton, who directed some of the Bond films like Goldfinger. This is one of his last films. And it stars Fred Ward as Rima Williams. There's this American who's trained in martial arts and goes out to fight evil. It's pure 80s trash, but really enjoyable. Fred Ward's always good fun in a film. You know, obviously you have a white actor playing an Asian, which is always nice and tasteful. It's just a silly romp. I mean, it's really daft. I mean, honestly, I cannot remember the plot in this one because I've seen it a while ago, but I remember the characters and the weirdness of it. There's a general mood of strangeness to it. It's almost like they did a canon film on a bigger budget, because it's got the weird canon feel of the plot kind of is invented as it goes. But they obviously had more money than a canon film does. And Fred Ward, probably too expensive for canon. So it's really enjoyable. I really had a lot of fun with this one. But the plot doesn't matter. It's just the Fred Ward in an 80s action movie is what really sells it. Now finally we have 52 Pickup. This is one of John Frankenheimer's 80s films. This is probably one of the best ones he did in the 80s, because he had a bad 80s. The 80s was not good for a Frankenheimer fan, frankly. He made a lot of mediocre films. And this was just after him. In the 70s apparently he had a drinking problem. In the 80s he was taking whatever job he could get. And this was one of the jobs he got. But this was a good one. This is what he could sink his teeth into, which is Elmer Leonard story. He had Roy Scheider in the lead, and he worked well with Scheider. And basically it's a blackmail story. Scheider is a guy who has an affair. So these seedy guys, played by John Glover, who's great as a seedy porno guy, decides to blackmail him to actually just get some money from him, some quick money. And it all goes wrong, all goes to hell. Scheider's wife is tied to some political guy as well, so if they release the information, Scheider, who's a big businessman, it'll bounce back on her too. So it's about not just the blackmail, but it's also what it does to his marriage. And you make some good actors here, all doing their stuff. It's set in a very seedy, LA world of just pornography and prostitution. And it's just really good, it's really strong. I mean, it's not Scheider's best film of the 80s of this period when he was doing more of these films. I mean, Conan Tate is really good. But I'd rather leave Conan Tate for a proper video. Like a longer video. This one, it's one of those films that I don't want to say that much about it, so you can just try and encourage you to go watch it. It's really good. And discover its joys, because there's lots of really nice stuff in it. It's really well made. You know, it's definitely the best film in this whole collection. I left the best one for last. But, you know, it's a good late Frankenheimer movie where he was actually doing some good work, which is nice. And it's very enjoyable. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope these recommendations, some of them you'll like, some of them you'll think, oh, I should try that one out. they're all watchable in one way or the other. Sometimes I think I explain where the strengths and weaknesses were, really. But so I hope you enjoy some of these and follow it up. But I thought it'd be a fun fun video to do in the middle of the summer. Bye for now, I'll see you later.